Hello everyone, my name is Ruby and I am a red blood cell, though in your medical charts you will see me called an erythrocyte. Erythro means red and cyte means cell. I am by far the most common type of cell floating in your blood. In fact, just a single drop of human blood contains about 5 million of us. Shape-wise, I look like a tiny, flexible donut without a hole, a shape known scientifically as a biconcave disc. This unique design isn't just for looks, it gives me an extra large surface area to grab onto gases, and it allows me to fold, bend, and squeeze through microscopic capillaries that are actually narrower than I am. Unlike almost every other cell in your body, I don't have a nucleus or DNA. I kick them out when I mature to make as much room as possible for my single, life-sustaining mission, acting as your body's specialized oxygen delivery truck. Life cycle from bone marrow to grave. Because I don't have a nucleus or internal cellular machinery, I cannot repair myself when I get damaged. This means I have a strict lifespan of about 120 days. Here is how my life cycle works from start to finish. 1. Production, erythropoiesis. My life begins inside the spongy center of your large bones, specifically the red bone marrow. The process of making me is called erythropoiesis, the hormonal trigger. This is a classic nursing exam favorite. When your kidneys sense that your blood oxygen levels are running low, hypoxia, they secrete a hormone called erythropoietin, EPO. EPO travels straight to the bone marrow and says, "We need more oxygen delivery trucks. Start making red blood cells." To build me properly, your body needs adequate supplies of iron, vitamin B12, and folic acid. 2. Destruction, the cellular graveyard. After about 4 months of hard work bumping through tight blood vessels, my outer membrane gets fragile and worn out. As I squeeze through the narrow maze-like channels of the spleen and the liver, my cell wall breaks open. Specialized immune cells called macrophages step in to clean up the pieces and recycle my components. The iron, highly valuable. The liver saves the iron and sends it back to the bone marrow to build the next generation of red blood cells. The protein, broken down into basic amino acids to be reused by the body. The waste, bilirubin. The remaining part of my oxygen-carrying protein cannot be reused. The liver converts it into a yellowish-green pigment called bilirubin, which is excreted into bile, enters the intestines, and ultimately gives your stool its characteristic brown color. The cargo, hemoglobin. I am essentially a giant bag packed full of a specialized iron-rich protein called hemoglobin, HB. Each individual red blood cell contains about 280 million hemoglobin molecules. How it works: hemoglobin is made of protein chains called globin and iron-containing pigments called heme. Oxygen molecules absolutely love iron. When you inhale and air fills your lungs, oxygen diffuses into the blood and binds directly to the iron inside my hemoglobin, creating oxyhemoglobin, which turns the blood a brilliant bright red. The drop-off. As I travel out to the tissues, like your working muscles or your brain, the environment changes. The tissues have low oxygen and high carbon dioxide, CO2. This causes the hemoglobin to loosen its grip, dropping off the fresh oxygen to feed the cells. The return trip. On my way back to the lungs, hemoglobin hitches a ride with some of the waste CO2 gas to bring it back to your lungs so you can breathe it out. Common red blood cell disorders. When you don't have enough of us, or if our hemoglobin cargo is defective, your tissues will starve for oxygen. 1. Anemia, the delivery truck shortage. Anemia is a broad term meaning you have a lower than normal number of healthy red blood cells or a deficit in hemoglobin. It has several distinct causes. Iron deficiency anemia, the most common type. Without iron, the bone marrow cannot build the heme center for hemoglobin. The cells produced are tiny, microcytic, and pale, hypochromic. Pernicious anemia caused by a lack of vitamin B12. As you remember from studying the stomach, the gastric parietal cells must secrete intrinsic factor to absorb B12. Without B12, red blood cells develop into massive, fragile, poorly functioning shapes, macrocytic. Aplastic anemia, a dangerous condition where the bone marrow itself is damaged, often by toxins, radiation, or chemotherapy, and completely stops manufacturing all blood cells. 2. Sickle cell disease, the structural defect, a genetic disorder where a mutation alters the blueprint of the hemoglobin molecule. what happens when a sickle cell patient experiences low oxygen conditions like dehydration, infection, or high altitudes. The abnormal hemoglobin molecules clump together into stiff, rigid rods. This warps the normally flexible round cell into a rigid curved crescent or sickle shape. The nursing emergency: these stiff, sickle-shaped cells cannot bend. They clump together and completely block blood flow in small capillaries, a vaso-occlusive crisis, causing excruciating pain and tissue ischemia, infarction downstream. Image comparing a normal round flexible red blood cell with a rigid crescent-shaped sickle cell blocking a capillary. 3. Polycythemia, the traffic jam. The exact opposite of anemia, this is an abnormal overproduction of red blood cells, making the blood thick and sludge-like. This increases the patient's risk for blood clots, stroke, and myocardial infarction because the heart has to push through literal cellular traffic. Critical nursing labs and assessments. When you are reviewing your patient's complete blood count, CBC lab results, you will look closely at these 3 values to grade red blood cell health. RBC count, the total number of red blood cells per microliter of blood. Normal adult ranges are roughly 4.5 to 5.5 million mcl, slightly lower in females, higher in males. Hemoglobin, HGB, measures the physical weight of the oxygen-binding protein in the blood. Normal values, 12 to 16